Good afternoon and welcome to Global News in Nigeria. I am Lois Turaki and here's what making headlines today. Let's get started. White House drops targets and tariffs on Colombia after agreement. United Nations experts condemn arrest of Palestinian journalist Abu Abunima. Trump hints at plan to clean out Gaza Strip entirely. World leaders to mark 80th Auschwitz liberation anniversary and hundreds flee DRC to Rwanda as fighting news Goma. Stay with me for these and more stories. On Sunday night, the White House said Colombia has agreed to let the United States to transport deported migrants back to the country after 2 U.S. military planes carrying deportees were blocked by Colombia early on Sunday, triggering a flurry of tariff threats between President Donald Trump and his Colombian counterpart. After Colombian President Gustavo Petro rejected the military planes from landing, stating the U.S. can't treat Colombian immigrants and migrants like criminals, Trump ordered emergency 25% tariffs on all imports from the country that will be increased to 50% in a week, a travel ban for Colombian citizens, and a revocation of visas for Colombian officials in the United States. Hours later, Pedro threatened a 25% retaliatory tariff hike on the U.S. in a series of social media posts attacking Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Pedro said he objected to the use of military planes and the treatment of migrants, but left the door open to Colombia receiving repatriated migrants joining on civilian planes. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt late on Sunday evening announced the U.S. and Colombia had agreed to the unrestricted acceptance of migrants from Colombia and will permit them to be returned to the country, including on U.S. military aircraft without limitation or delay. Leavitt said in the statement the U.S. will not sign the tariffs or economic sanctions Trump ordered unless Colombia fails to honor this agreement. He said tariffs and financial sanctions will be halted, but visa sanctions against Colombian officials and stricter customs inspections of Colombian nationals and cargo ships ordered by Trump earlier on Sunday will remain in effect until the first plane loaded of Colombian deportees is successfully returned. Luis Gilberto Murillo, Colombian foreign minister, confirmed late on Sunday, just moments after the White House's statement, that U.S. deportation flights have resumed. The rise in trade threats mark the first time Trump took major action against another country over his immigration policy since he took office last week. Rubio said in a statement on Sunday afternoon that Colombian officials had approved 2 military flights carrying migrants to Colombia and then revoked the authorization once they were en route. Petro denied that he had given authorization, written on X after the Secretary of State's statement. I will never allow Colombians to be brought in handcuffs on flights. Marco, if officials from the foreign ministry allow this, I will never be under my direction. He also called on U.S. citizens living in Colombia illegally to regularize their stay without offering specifics. American citizens who wish to do so can be in Colombia. I believe in human freedom, he wrote on X, adding, you will never see me burning a U.S. flag or carrying out a raid to return handcuffed illegal immigrants to the U.S. The State Department said in a statement on Sunday evening that the U.S. Embassy in Bogota had halted visa processing in reprisal for Colombia's refusal to accept repatriation flights. United Nations human rights experts and activists have criticized the apprehension of a prominent Palestinian journalist in the Swiss city of Zurich, saying it raised concerns about freedom of speech. The website said in a statement that Ali Abunimah, the executive director of online publication Electronic Intifada, which calls itself Palestine's weapon of mass destruction, was detained by Swiss police on Saturday before his speech in Zurich. Swiss police confirmed that the 53-year-old American citizen had been arrested. They cited an entry bar and said further measures under its immigration law were being deliberated. Irene Khan, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Opinion and Expression, called the arrest shocking news and urged Switzerland to probe and release him in a post on social media on Sunday. The climate surrounding freedom of speech in Europe is becoming increasingly toxic, and we should all be concerned, says Francesca Albanese, United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in the occupied territories. pro-Palestinian advocacy group Swiss Action for Human Rights launched a petition to release Abu Nima on Sunday. A spokesperson for the United States Embassy in Bern said it was providing suitable consular aid after seeing reports of the arrest of a U.S. citizen, declining further comment. Abu Nima's arrest came a day after he arrived in Zurich for a speaking tour, Electronic Intifada said in a statement, describing the arrest as a growing backlash from Western governments against expressions of solidarity with the Palestinian people. The website noted that many activists and journalists were detained, raided, or charged using counter-terror powers in the United Kingdom last year. They included Asa Winstanley, an associate editor with Electronic Intifada, whose home was raided and computers and phones seized, it said, adding that Winstanley has not been charged with any crime. During a solidarity protest for Palestine on Saturday in Geneva, demonstrators said Abu Nima's arrest has no legal basis. Now, President Donald Trump indicated on Saturday that he had spoken with the King of Jordan about potentially building houses and moving over 1 million Palestinians from Gaza to neighboring countries, a remarkable proposal from a sitting United States president. Trump said he asked Jordan's Abdullah II, a major U.S. partner in the region, to take in more Palestinians in a Saturday phone call. According to the United Nations report from Jordan, said the call with Trump, but made no mention of relocating Palestinians. The kingdom is already home to over 2.39 million registered Palestinian refugees. Trump said he would like both Jordan and Egypt, which borders the battered enclave, to house people, and that he will speak to Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi about the matter on Sunday. Trump, who noted there have been centuries-long battles in the region, said on Saturday, "You're talking about 1.5 million people, and we just clean out that whole thing." He continued, "I don't know, something has to happen, but it's literally a demolition site right now. Almost everything's demolished and people are dying there, and so I'd rather get involved with some of the Arab nations and build housing in a different location where I think they could be maybe live in peace for a change." The president and expropriator development said the potential housing could be temporary or could be a long term. Egypt's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said in Sunday's statement that it refutes any forced displacement of Palestinians. The ministry did not specifically mention Trump, but reiterated Egypt's position against the displacement of Palestinians from their land through forced eviction. Such actions threaten stability, risk extending the conflict further in the region, and undermine opportunities for peace and coexistence, the statement continued. Jordan is committed to ensuring that Palestinians remain on their land, its Minister of Foreign Affairs said in a statement on Sunday. Safadi said he looks forward to working with the latest U.S. administration that Trump was clear in stating that he wants to achieve peace in the region. The minister also reiterated Jordan's firm and unchanging position favoring a two-state solution. Egypt's foreign ministry in its statement also called on the international community to support reaching a two-state solution to the Israel-Palestinian conflict. In Poland on Monday, world leaders will mark Holocaust Memorial Day and 80th anniversary of the liberation of Nazi Germany's Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp. Britain's monarch King Charles, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, and French President Emmanuel Macron are among those attending the event, which will start in a tent erected over the former death camps in famous entrance gate. All of Auschwitz's remaining survivors are invited to the commemorations and can bring one person for support. The Auschwitz Memorial and Museum said in a statement that we are fully aware of how physically demanding and emotionally taxing attending the commemoration event at the site of the former camp can be for them. One of the signs of the 80th anniversary is a freight train car, which will be placed directly in front of the main gate. The train car is dedicated to the memory of the roughly 420,000 Hungarian Jews who were deported to Auschwitz. Approximately 1.1 million people were killed at the concentration camp from 1940 to 1945, several of them Jews, but also other victims of the Third Reich, including Poles, the Roma, and Soviet prisoners of war. In 2005, the United Nations declared January 27th as the International Holocaust Memorial Day, Observed annually, it marks the liberation of Auschwitz in 1945 and remembers the 6 million Jews who lost their lives under the Nazis. The museum says the event on Monday offers the chance for shared commemoration and world reflection. It comes at a time of rising anti-Semitism in Europe, triggered by conflict in the Middle East, which saw Israel launch a war on Gaza in response to terror attacks carried out by Palestinian militant group Hamas on October 7th, 2023. Since October 2023, there has been an addition in anti-Semitic incidents in Europe, with some Jewish community organizations reporting an increase of more than 400% according to a survey from the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights (FRA) published in June. Of those surveyed by the FRA, 76% of the 76% say they hide their Jewish identity at least occasionally, and 34% avoid Jewish events or sites due to feeling unsafe. Europe is witnessing a wave of anti-Semitism, partly driven by the conflict in the Middle East. This severely limits Jewish people's ability to live in safety and with dignity, FRA Director Sirpas Rousseau said. Events in the Middle East have also stoked a rise in Islamophobic events across Europe, including arson, verbal and physical abuse, and the aiming of mosques. In Africa, on Sunday, hundreds of people tried to flee the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, into Rwanda. Heavy gunfire resounded across the major eastern Congolese city of Goma from the front line just a few kilometers away. In recent weeks, the M23 rebels have made major territorial gains along the border, with Rwanda closing in on regional capital. The Rwanda-backed group early on Monday claimed to have captured the city despite calls by the United Nations Security Council on Sunday for it to pause its advance. Its announcement came minutes before a 48-hour deadline expired that had been enforced by the group for the Congolese army to surrender their weapons. The United Nations says there is mass panic among the city's 2 million inhabitants. Late on Saturday, Kinshasa severed diplomatic relations with Kigali, which has refuted supporting the rebels despite evidence collected by United Nations experts and others. At least 13 peacekeepers have been killed in the rise of violence over the past week. Goma is a regional hub for security and humanitarian efforts in the eastern DRC. The M23, which is majorly made up of ethnic Tutsi, broke away from the Congolese army over a decade ago. It is one of closely 100 armed groups that have been vying for a foothold in the mineral-rich region. The M23 rebels' offensive in the heart of the mineral-rich region threatens to dramatically exacerbate one of Africa's longest war and further displace victims and civilians. The long-running turmoil has created one of the world's biggest humanitarian crunch. Congo's government and allied forces, including the Southern African Development Community Mission in the DRC, SAMIDARC, and United Nations forces since 2021 have been keeping the M23 away from Goma. MONUSCO, United Nations Organization Stabilization Mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, entered the DRC over 2 decades ago and has closely 14,000 peacekeepers on the ground. Stay tuned, and when we return, we'll dive into more stories from Nigeria. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and we continue our stories from Nigeria. Serap sues federal government NCC over 50% telecom tariff increase. The Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, Serap, has filed a lawsuit against the administration of President Bola Tinubu and the Nigerian Communications Commission (NCC) over what it labeled as the arbitrary, unconstitutional, unlawful, and unfair and unreasonable 50% surge in telecom tariffs. Recently, the NCC approved the tariff increase, which raised the cost of a 1-minute call from 11 naira to 16.5 naira, the price of 1 gigabyte of data from 287.5 naira to 431.25 naira, and SMS charges from 4 naira to 6 naira. The rise has triggered extensive criticism, with Sarab leading legal opposition to the decision in the suit filed at the Federal High Court in Abuja. Suit number FHC/ABJ/CR/11 stroke 111 stroke 2025. Sarab contends that the terrorist surge infringes on citizens' rights to freedom of expression and access to information as enshrined in the Nigerian Constitution and international treaties. A statement issued on Sunday by Sarab titled Sarab wants court to stop Tinubu government telcos from implementing 50% telecom tariff hike revealed this. Sarab argued that the decision disregards the principle of legality, which needs fairness, reasonableness, and adherence to due process in the exercise of statutory powers. The addition comes amidst Nigeria's economic challenges, with a recent report by the National Bureau of Statistics showing that 133 million Nigerians are multidimensionally poor. The report emphasizes worsening living conditions, with more than half of the population depending on wood, dung, or charcoal for cooking. In its prayer, Sarab is seeking a court declaration that the tariff spike violates constitutional provisions and international human rights treaties, as well as an injunction to stop the implementation of the hike. The organization is also asking the court to nullify the NCC's decision, describing it as extortive, unreasonable, and a breach of due process. Sarab's Deputy Director Kolawole Oluwadare stressed the broader implications of the tariff hike. No date has been set for the hearing of the case yet, which could have major ramifications for telecom regulation in Nigeria, the statement noted. Meanwhile, uproar as contractors seek 700% hike for Abuja runway. There is outrage among aviation stakeholders over the disclosure that a contractor handling the second runway at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, has demanded an increase in the contract sum from 90 billion naira to 532 billion naira. The addition was supposed to be encompassed in the 2025 budget, representing a 700% on the original sum of 90 billion naira in 2023. The contractor, who was awarded the contract at the rate of 90 billion naira in 2023, is said to be seeking addition to 532 billion naira in the 2025 budget. However, Festus Keyamo, the Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, rejected the contract variation demand during a budget defense session at the National Assembly in Abuja. The minister, during the budget defense session with the Joint Aviation Committee of the National Assembly, disclosed that after 3.4 billion naira post-contract consultancy fee was paid to contractor handling the project in May 2023, 90 billion naira was later approved in the same year for the whole contract, out of which 30 billion was released. Following the disclosure, several Nigerians, mainly major players in the sector, have stated their discontent at the system and the outrageous demand for the contract variation. They alleged that the demand was fraught with institutional corruption and challenged the National Assembly to expose those behind it. Some major players who commented on the trending news urged the National Assembly to find out who is seeking to contract the runway for 532 billion naira when it was awarded for 64 billion naira in 2010 and 89 billion naira in 2019, and 6 years after, it is now increased by almost 700%. They also suggested that the NAS should go into its archives to follow the trend of the contract, adding that it was high time the nation separated the function of the Ministry and Minister of Aviation from the functions of the statutory and responsible service provider agencies. And finally, on the news on insecurity, troops kill 70 terrorists, 22 soldiers die in Borno State. The Defense Headquarters (DHQ) said on Sunday that at least 70 terrorists were neutralized by the Nigerian forces, while 22 soldiers were killed as others sustained wounds during encounters with insurgents in Borno State. Director Defense Media Operations Major General Edward Buba said troops of Operation Hadinkai in the northeast of the country conducted clearance operations to renowned terrorist stronghold and enclave known as Timbuktu Triangle. He said the ongoing operations targeted at dismantling terrorist presence within the triangle began on January 16, 2025. He identified the neutralized terrorist commanders as the Terrorist Special Forces Commander Malam Umar, Terrorist Operations Commander Abu Yazid, the terrorist brigade commander. Improvised explosive devices, IEDs, suicide bombers, as well as suicide bombers in explosive vehicles were deployed by the hoodlums to ward off troops' advances and attacks during the operations, according to General Buba. However, the director expressed sadness that 22 soldiers lost their lives in action during the encounters. May their soul rest in peace. A recap of major stories says White House drops tariffs on Colombia after agreement. United Nations experts condemn arrest of Palestinian journalist Abu Nima. Trump hints at plan to clean out Gaza Strip entirely. World leaders to mark 80th Auschwitz liberation anniversary, and hundreds flee DRC to Rwanda as fighting nears Goma. Remember to stay informed and stay connected. Until next time, I'm Lois Chiraki wishing you a safe